Okay. بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله نشهد أن لا إله إلا الله نشهد أن محمد رسول الله اللهم صل وسلم بارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا. I'll begin. Assalamu alaikum everybody. Thank you for thank you Omar, Tarek, Hasan for being on this important episode. I think we've been thinking about this idea for a while, and subhanAllah, we're going through an amazing and unprecedented times. I think definitely in our country and I think across the world, kind of times of absolute a disruptive time, a challenging time for many, definitely a different time that we're all experiencing and we're going to be adjusting to. And so inshallah, what we wanted to do today as an institution is to cover some of the lessons for us as community leaders, as people volunteering, engaged in our communities. We wanted to cover essentially lessons on two aspects: how we should be adjusting, reacting to the times that we're in at an individual level, and what we should be doing as organizations, as a community at large, as an organized community, whether it's an institution or a nonprofit organization or an MSA or some kind of entity that's really organizing in the Muslim community, but really going through what do we do now? What are we supposed to do at an organizational level? And so I really wanted to, and I'm happy that we have all our instructors, Brother Omar, Usman, and Mohammad, Hasan, and Brother Tarek, Mourad. Very excited to kind of us all sharing our reflections, our lessons, and I guess I'll go around to each one of you first to kind of give just your general thoughts. What was this whole experience or ordeal, or however you want to kind of describe it? What has been your approach to this? What have you learned, or what have you seen just in the past week or so as everything has happened? We'll start with Omar. Go ahead, Brother Omar.
All right, so I guess you put me on the spot first. I think I think I'm probably like a lot of people in the sense that I'm still processing it. It's unprecedented. I can't think of any time in my life, at least, that I've seen any situation quite like this. And I think that's maybe more indicative that, alhamdulillah, I've had a very easy lifestyle up to this point. So this is, it's unprecedented. I don't think there's much of a blueprint necessarily, or like a model to follow, like, hey, when this happens, this is how you act. So I think the challenge is that this is uncharted territory. And so we have to carve out kind of how to move forward. I would say in terms of just reflections and things of that sort, I think there's been a few immediate ones. First and foremost, obviously, being that as much as we think we're in control of things, we're never in control. It was like we plan, but Allah plans, and nothing is going to overcome his qadr, his decree. So that's the first reminder, is just our own weakness, our own inability to have control over the things that we think that we do. And then I think second is just cultivating that sense of tawakkul, because now you're thrown into a situation where you don't know what's going to happen, right? Like I think it's similar to a sense of when you feel turbulence on a flight, or people give the analogy of like when you're out on the ship and the waters are stormy. There's nothing that you yourself can do to fix the situation. You have to essentially ride it out. So I think the main thing now is we're kind of coming to grips with this new reality. We don't know how long it's going to last, but it's now a matter of figuring out how best to make use of the time, how to make the best of the situation, what lessons we can take. And then I think the hardest part really is dealing with the uncertainty. I think it would be one thing if we said that, okay, it's going to be crazy like this for 6 weeks, or we got to buckle down for 3 months. But then after that, it'll be fine. I think if you have that in your head, it's a little bit easier. But right now, it's a lot of uncertainty, and I think that for a lot of people is very difficult to deal with.
Great points, excellent points. I'll go to Brother Tarek. I guess just off the bat, the first reflection that comes to your mind, just in the past week and a half, 2 weeks that we've gone through this. I know you're in the Bay Area, and it's been pretty hectic out there as well. Just your thoughts, reflections, kind of the times that we're going through.
Yeah, so I'm not going to repeat the issues of tawakkul. Of course, this is really, really very, very important in our lives that we have to have this tawakkul on Allah because nothing is certain in any way. Nothing is certain. We have the illusion of certainty in our lives, we think, but really it's not. But what strikes me are two different things that came to mind right away. The first one is resiliency. And as you look around you, you will start noticing people who are resilient and people who are not resilient. And those who are resilient are ready to adapt and ready to take this on as a challenge and find different ways to handle things. And those that are not resilient, you'll find that they will be really, it becomes really, really hard with them because they're used to particular things happening in their lives in particular ways, and they're not happening that way anymore. So that's one thing, and we can talk about that later in the discussion. The other thing that just occurred to me, subhanallah, is when I was growing up, I was young and growing up, and I was only seeing things always becoming better and better. You know, more money coming in, more, situations are getting better, life is getting easier with lots of different things around you. But the reflection I wanted to kind of bring in here is, subhanallah, last century there was two world wars. And if you could imagine yourself in a world war, the world was uncertain for like 4 or 5 years at a time, plus all the stuff that happened before that got us into the world wars. Alhamdulillah, this is a virus that Allah has created, and Allah is a lot more gentle with us than we are with each other. And this gives me a lot more hope that, with a good tawakkul on Allah, whatever happens is going to be for the best and be for the good, inshallah. And we're, inshallah, will not be at the mercy of other human beings, but at the mercy of Allah all the time. And that reflection just kind of came to me, and I just thought, subhanallah, this century, 20 years into the century already, and now we're seeing something that is affecting the whole world, like the World War I, World War II. And I'm saying, alhamdulillah, it wasn't nuclear war or anything like this. Alhamdulillah.
That's a beautiful reflection. Jazakallah khair for sharing. Hasan, your first thoughts, kind of the ordeal going through this, other people going through this unprecedented times.
Wow, I mean, it has been, I guess, few things kind of I've been processing, right? In one angle, I'm trying to, help my clients who are, people who are, vulnerable, dealing with addiction, mental health, kind of process this very, hard time. And then, I haven't had time to kind of process because, at my work, we're trying to move into telehealth. So things are just moving so fast, trying to ride the team, make transitions. So it's been very day to day, not even thinking about what's been happening overall. So that's been one side of it. Another side have been, worried about, I guess, that, the percentage of, getting sick from this is not necessarily as high as it is for certain age group or whatnot. But it's still kind of inside feeling a little worried, and then for my family or whatever else. And then another time, I've been telling people last year and a half that 2 years, they know what, save as much liquid as you can, because it's going to be a good time to buy stocks or, good time to buy property, whatever. And so, I've been slowly dumping some money into investment. This is not investment advice, by the way, for anybody. But so it's like you're dealing with it, now it happened, and it's happening. And it might be for the next another year or so. And so it's kind of been like this mixture of like just focusing on day to day, so not having sort of time to even think what's happening, just kind of dealing with the work, dealing with as things are evolving family wise, and just being in New York. So that's sort of been my kind of helping other people, my clients, kind of go through this while I'm trying to deal with it myself. It's really unprecedented, and I think as Brother Tarek and Omar has said, even from the angle of as a Muslim community, right, so for Muslim organizations, I don't know, in my lifetime I haven't heard masajid being closed across the world. Like when I don't know in the how many times, it's not something a common occurrence in the history of the ummah even. And so this is unprecedented, and so I think it's huge, and people's lives are all turned upside down, and whether because of social distancing and fear, but this is new, this is different,
Yeah.
this is, and I think what Omar hit on the nail is the fact that and what I got to reflect. One, you have no control over what's happening, not really, and then two, there's so much uncertainty. You don't know what's going to really happen. What's the timeline?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So Hassan, I know you wanted to kind of speak to that point. So obviously
Mm,
there's a spectrum of how people are dealing with this.
yeah.
On the end of like real anxiety, real fear, real worry, at an individual level, how are people supposed to cope with that? Like, what are they like? How what But I talked about resilience. How are people supposed to like get
Mm,
themselves out of that maybe paranoia or that fear or that panic,
right.
anxiety
And
that they have?
I think first we have to normalize it, right? I think that's the reason why you're seeing like a lot of celebrities coming out and saying, I've been tested positive. And they've been open about that because they're trying to normalize it. Look, it's more than being a deadly disease necessarily. It's more about helping and making sure that we don't affect the vulnerable, right? Folks who might get, sick and be lethal for them. So I think I think I would, few things that are actually causing. I think we have to get to the root first. But what's causing this anxiety and worry, which might be normal, but then sometimes is way on over the top, exaggerated. Um, Number one, obviously, the lack of control, because you don't have any control with what's happening. So, and then number two is the uncertainty, because you don't know when, how,
Ever.
where. Number three is because of the bombardment of information, right? 24/7 news cycle, and your endless Twitter feed and your endless Facebook and Instagram posts. And so you're constantly hearing about it. It starts to affect you, right? And to the point that some people are showing psychosomatic symptoms, right? What that is that you start to think like, oh, I think I got a fever. Oh, I think I'm dry cough.
Yeah, it's
I
true.
don't know. So you start, because you hear it so much, you start to feel like you have the symptoms. And it's happening among my patients actually in the clinic. And so people kind of having this phantom symptoms, and because you hear it so much. There was a recent some sort of analysis done that when the news spoke about mask, you know, the search for how to buy a mask went up. So as news talks about it more, or it puts it out there, people kind of get frantic about trying to buy a mask. Even though surgical mask, if it's not N95, grade, doesn't do much. And now, in fact, the strand has kind of evolved, or is staying in the surface and staying in the air as a particle. So, but people just feel like, okay, I think it feels good. I mean, I see people in New York City subway putting their scarf around their nose, or just or their hand. It must make you feel better about it, but it's not gonna really necessarily do much. So that's number three. And number four, I think what's really causing over the top anxiety is also somewhat, I would say, social distancing turning into social isolation, right? For some people, not
Yeah.
having that social space, being able to talk, being their daily routine, their weekend routine, spending time with friends, families, going out, because that also now, hampered down, that kind of affecting them being able to cope with this, this huge happening in their life. You know,
Mm, mm,
so going from the top, number one, if you are dealing with, and as you as a leader, especially we are speaking to a lot of folks who are in charge of organizations, and in charge of, maybe you have your own company, in charge of your family, or whatever it might be, whoever you're leading, unless you can get your anxiety in check, your own resiliency at a level, you can't really lead and help, right? So as far as the uncertainty is concerned, number one, being able to focus on what is in your control, right? The lack of control, focusing on what is in your control. Your day-to-day schedule is in your control. You continue to work on your work responsibility, making things at home. Those are in your control.
mm, mm.
Uncertainty, number two, not focusing on what's going to happen with the pandemic, what's going to be the long-term impact on the economy. You just don't know those information, and reading more and more articles, hoping that somebody somewhere in the analysis is going to help you give a timeline, that just maybe actually makes it worse. So instead of focusing on what you kind of do know, as far as your certainty, what you do know is what's happening today. What you do know is the CDC recommendations that you do know. And then for the mass information, really, I think you have to take a little pause from all this 24/7 cycle, and reading all these endless articles and posts. It's good to be informed, but when you're getting bombarded like that, it's actually not helping. So take a pause from that. Get daily updates, no problem. The government is sending out text messages, from the state. Get the updates, but focus on serving your constituents, focusing on how you're gonna move your business to cater in this working from home virtual. I've been working on last 1 month, which is last 1 week, rather, helping transition my entire staff into virtual, which is new for us in healthcare, in our setting. And then number 4, the social isolation, really finding new ways to connect. It's not just about making quick phone calls or posting and commenting. It's really about picking up the phone or on FaceTime, whatever it might be, just talking and reflecting and connecting, and it's still spending the social time now and virtually, which people already do anyways, but doing the quality of it. I think those 4 things would really help you kind of build more resilience as you kind of try to help lead yourself and your family or your organization or your work or company.
Those are great. Those are great reflections, great points. I think, a lot of times, particularly like as let's say like community leaders, people really engage in the community, they're involved, they're active. How are they supposed to, like, those are some really good points that Hasan offered, Omar. What should communities be doing to like remedy some of these things that are causing anxiety? Like, obviously, I think Hasan pointed out, like, that social capacities, those, abilities to find some kind of certainty, some kind of like somebody helping kind of console you and when you're going through like that anxiety of like you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, next week. What should community leaders or community organizations be focusing on right now?
So that's it's a tough question. I would say for a community organization that, their lifeblood literally is, let's say, the community work. So whether it's the masjid or an MSA or something like that, where your regular means of interaction is everyone getting together. It could be something as large as Jummah prayer. It could be the weekly halaqah that 10 people show up to, right? That's where people go to get that spiritual nourishment, to get that community interaction. And so now that's been taken away, right? So I think for communities, it's a focus on, is there something that they can do to cultivate community in this time? And I don't know that there's an easy solution. I would say that, one trend I've seen is things like this, people going live on Facebook, live on Instagram. That's one thing. If you're, let's say, the imam or something like that, that might be one outlet. Another might be, and it doesn't always have to be facilitated like by the masjid or the institution. It might just be more of a general advice to people, is maybe you now create your own little, it could be a WhatsApp group, it could be something, but just to stay in touch. Yeah. I think for some masjids, one option might be that if you do have, let's say, like a weekly class, maybe you continue those classes, but do them online, right? Or maybe you do have your little 15-minute daily reminder that you're broadcasting out live. And the point of that is not to get like build up 1 million followers or this and that, but it's something that is directed for your community. And I think one thing that enables people to do is like, one thing that I'll give you something super, almost, I don't want to say it's trivial, but maybe something that's really overlooked, right? And that's on Fridays after Jummah's over, what normally happens is the board member giving the announcements is talking about things happening in the community, right? So-and-so from our community is sick, make dua for them. So-and-so in our community, this happened. And they're literally providing a few quick hit updates on the community. And I think that just because, for the next few weeks, maybe we don't have Jummah, doesn't mean that those things have to stop, right? So whatever little actions there are that can help cultivate that sense of community, try keeping those up, even though it might be in a virtual format. So again, it's unprecedented. It's maybe time to be a little bit innovative and see what other solutions you can come up with. I think, one thing is especially from a perspective of community leadership, don't burden yourself with the expectation that people want you to have it figured out, right? No one is expecting the community leader to just come in and be like, here's the game plan, everyone, here's what we're doing, here's how we're all going to stay sane and happy and positive and all these things. Like no one's expecting you to have the solution, but they are looking for you to be making an effort. And part of that effort could be just simply soliciting from the community, like, hey, this is all new for us. What do you think that we can do to cultivate that sense of brotherhood and sisterhood while we're stuck in our homes, or while we can't go to the masjid, or things like that? And take that feedback and build little solutions that service your local community.
I love that. I mean, those are some, subhanAllah, Jazakallah khair, Omar, those are some amazing points. I think people don't realize, like, we have our own, lack of a better word, tribes that we create, right? Our communities are like little tribes. And if you don't kind of collect or gather everybody, beautifully mentioned, digitally now, whether it's on a WhatsApp group or a Facebook group or some kind of way where people are really, you know, you need to still communicate to the people in your community who you're dealing with, who you're talking to, programs. And I even a lot of times Jazakallah khair, again, great points about like being adaptive and being agile and being creative, like how we're going to communicate content. I think too, people should realize not to just keep speaking to people too. Like you really want to get a chance. I think you beautifully said it. You want to hear people, like maybe just connecting and over Zoom or some kind of platform, and you know, people are just talking to each other and like communicating. I think that's super important as well. Of course, the education is critical, but that social component, that it's not neglected, where people, you know, make dua for me, or make dua, this person's sick, or, you know, subhanAllah, that's super, super important. And I appreciate very insightful thoughts.
I would say
God,
this is the silver lining, right? I think sometimes crisis pushes us to be innovative. And I'm seeing that, you know, even at my, you know, work, at where we're forced to go into certain things that we should have innovated a long time ago. Same way we people been saying, you know, masajid need to, or masajid or nonprofits or organizations that serve the Muslim community. A lot of folks are not at physical location. How are you building community off space, on virtually? So now you're forced to kind of create those communities for a lot of our Muslim organizations, and that's, I think, in really good, and it will serve us well in the long term.
Absolutely. I mean, I think Sheikh Abdul Nasser said this on our podcast. Actually, he said, "A crisis is the mother of innovation." Like, you got to adapt, or if you want to get it done. Brother Tarek, what else should? So if I'm a community member, I'm a volunteer, I'm leading a committee, a team, I'm a board member. What else should I be thinking about in like my responsibilities towards my organization, my community? What should I be focused on, if you will, from other things, from a programming angle maybe, or other things? Like, what is my responsibilities now?
One of the most important things here as a leader is to recognize. One of the most things important here is to recognize as a leader that people come in many different flavors and come in many different behavioral styles. And some people are very precise with their discussions. Some people are very social with their discussion, and so on. So there's several things I'd like to share with you here. For number one, these platforms that we're talking about, such as Zoom, Zoom is very intentional, but things like Facebook, things like Twitter, they're not intentional, and we've been using them more as an entertainment facility. We tend not to believe everything we see on Facebook because we know of, people exaggerate or, Photoshop things and all kinds of things. So we tend to look at them, and we've been conditioned to look at them as fun or as interesting or a laugh or something of this nature. And when we get bothered by them, we just turn them off. We just don't think about them anymore. So now it becomes more important to understand that, we have to be more intentional with using these. We have to be more real with using them. And we're trying to really touch and work with other people through the human connection in and of itself. But we also have to understand, even as leaders, that people come in different flavors in terms of how they behave. Some people want bottom line results right now. Show me what we can do to get Jummah back on again. Show me what we can do so I can get my groceries done. Something like this, right? Others want to collect information, they call it analysis by paralysis, right? Paralysis by analysis, right? And just can collect information and not work with it, and just have a lot of information. And sometimes that's good, but in a situation where you have to act fast, it's not the best. Other people really want to be out and see people and be social with them. Others are worried about people's feelings and so on. And so as a leader, we have to really be cognizant of all of these kind of things that are going to go on in people's lives, and we have to be able to help them address them. One of the most important things is to provide a sense of normalcy. And the problem that I'm seeing right now is that a lot of the organizations are trying to jump on to Zoom and to jump onto a lot of different platforms. Come over here and let's talk about this, and we'll tell you about this, and we'll help you with this, right? And it's overwhelming because now all of a sudden my phone is blowing up. I got to see, a zillion different WhatsApp messages and lots of emails I have to start reading and so on, and nothing is in order. Everything is chaotic. So first of all and foremost, the leaders have to provide a space for each family to allow them to come to a normal, some part of their life that's normal, that is a little bit predictable. It could be the dinner table. It could be, an hour in the morning to get through their emails. It could be whatever it has to be, but they have to have some time that's normal for them, that is kind of predictable. One of the things that we know about ourselves as human beings is that we are very habit-oriented people. Our minds start forming habits very quickly. As a young person, it doesn't make a difference if I have a habit or not. I'm just going to jump into this and this and try all the things. As you get older and older, you want that steady pace in your life because you have a certain habit of doing things in a particular way. When you don't have it, you need to establish a new habit. So it's very, very important at this time is to allow and give advice to the community as a leader to establish a routine of some sort in your house, even if it's just for an hour a day. There's a certain time in the house that's a routine so you can focus and feel normal and feel predictable during that time. And I think that that's one of the most important things that I would see that community leaders have to do. And then after this whole rush to bring all these programs together, I think we need to kind of help people space out the programs to something that is beneficial and useful. Like, for instance, delivering food to people if they need to, helping people get to the hospitals or doctors if they need to. Do something that is more in control for the brothers and sisters who are okay, and help others feel they're not isolated in their houses. Older people get isolated in their houses anyway. People forget about them anyway.
Yeah, true.
Even worse right now. So you have to really reach out and do something with that. Nextdoor is a very good way to do that, right? Nextdoor, you can actually go visit your neighbors through Nextdoor and tell them, if anybody needs something, I'll go run to the store and get it for you.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's a lot of other ways, and each community all communities face the same thing. So each community leader will have to do what they can in their own community.
Great. Jazakallah khair, brother. You broke up a little bit there, but Jazakallah khair. I mean, first, I really appreciate the idea of understanding the inclusivity of being a leader, right? I think a lot of times we don't realize everybody's taking things differently. Everybody's at different places. Some people are really getting hit hard by this economically, financially. Some people are getting hit hard by this health-wise. Some people are reacting to things differently, and I think we always want people to be like, just toughen up and be tough and, this, that, or the other. But people react to things very differently. And I love that inclusive element too. We really need to think more holistically about our community and understand the fringes, not just the kind of what we see in front of us all the time. And I think that's super critical. And I think the other point, that's an amazing point, is how can we understand that the most disenfranchised, elderly, those that might be even sick before this crisis, people that are, again, suffering even financially, how can the community create some kind of norms or some kind of support or help? And honestly, I'm on Facebook like everybody else, and I'm seeing some really innovative things from amazing centers, like centers that are giving out free food daily, like 3 times a day. Centers that are starting to collect funding for those that need. So you got to put in an application if you're being hit financially by this, so that we can support you. I think there's a lot of innovative things being done too, and I think that should reciprocate. If you're in an organization or community and you can do something to support those, whoever it might be, that's disenfranchised or really getting hit hard by this. I think that's a great, great initiative that can be started. Hasan, go ahead, I got you.
Okay, so I was gonna say, I think it starts off with you, if you're leading a team, leading an organization, it starts off with you, and I think it starts at the top, where I think being able to, you don't have to know all the answers, and like I told my team the other day, I said, look, I don't know exactly how these things are gonna work out. We're kind of learning. The state, the state Department of Health is giving us permission and expanding Medicaid, policies on HIPAA and so forth. That's allowing us to do telehealth, for example. And I said, look, I don't know all the answers yet, because they keep asking me all kind of questions. I said, look, dude, I don't know all the answers. I'm learning it. I'm implementing it. So I think you have to start from the top and say, okay, let's figure out this out together. So giving that confidence to your team, and I think a lot of organizations or teams who are really being hit hard financially, there's a lot of arguments is starting to start, and people are getting frustrated. People are jobs on the line, even in Muslim nonprofits, some people with jobs on the line, and definitely in a lot of small businesses and so forth, with jobs on the line. And so a lot of frustration, a lot of anxiety, a lot of tension. And I think it starts from the top, where you say, look, we don't know all the answers. We're going to get through this together. We're going to come out this, intact and even at a better place. And then now let's innovate how we deliver what we used to deliver. If we used to provide education, let's find a different way to provide education. If we provided social services, let's find a different way to deliver our social services. You have to kind of reevaluate your supply chain and kind of your delivery of your service. And so getting your team together, saying that we're gonna innovate and we're gonna make this work, inshallah, and then kind of going from there, and then you could get to all kind of creative solutions, what your particular organization or particular team, even your MSA, what you can be offering right now, given your mission and vision that you already had. How do you just deliver it differently this time?
It's great points, amazing points. I actually wanted Omar to reflect on this. It was somebody left us a comment that said we should try to facilitate a goal-oriented environment that brings some kind of stability to our teams or to people in our community. Omar, what would you do if you have you're an MSA president, or you're on an MSA board, or you're a youth director and you have multiple or you're a part of a youth organization, or you're just you're in charge of programming in your center. How should you kind of manage your volunteers right now, or people that are they're so used to being busy doing things, and now we don't know what we want to do? How would you manage or navigate that kind of dilemma that a lot of people are having, running their organization still? Essentially, how would you run the organization still?
So I'm not sure if this is going to answer it directly, but a few thoughts based on especially what Hasan just said. I think, well, one is remembering that the energy of your organization is reflective of the energy of the leader, right? So if the leader is anxious and nervous and freaking out, then everyone else is also going to adopt that same behavior. It's just like an airplane. When there's heavy turbulence, you look at the flight attendant. If the flight attendant is calm, still reading a book, and the plane is shaking, you're like, okay, it must not be bad because they're not freaking out, right? So you give yourself a little bit of reassurance. So I think it's important for the leader to present that front of calmness, of like Brother Tarek mentioned, resiliency, all those characteristics. I think the second thing in terms of volunteers and focus, and you can't replicate everything that everyone's doing online, but there does need to be a sense of involvement. And this does go back to what you were asking earlier about what the leader should be focused on. I think there's a lot about the programming and helping people navigate through it, but I think there's another challenge that Hasan touched on, which is, in the corporate world, we call it business continuity. And a lot of nonprofits are lacking any type of continuity planning or succession planning or things like that. And I think being in a situation where your hand is forced, where you're not able to continue programming as scheduled, you're not able to continue activities as scheduled, it has a side effect of giving you an ability to shift that focus somewhere else. And I think especially for our audience, where we're talking about people who are in charge of organizations or in leadership roles, I would say that this is a very critical time to get your core team together and start looking at those things. Start looking at your finances and budgeting, right? A masjid for the last 10 years may have been okay just getting by with their Juma collections and an annual fundraiser, and they pay their bills. That's not going to work right now. And so now you're going to be forced to come up with other funding models that maybe will create a better sense of sustainability. Now is the time to start looking at things like, well, okay, if we do have, even though we're nonprofit, but we have paid staff, that's, yeah, it's overhead in the sense that you have to make sure that you're budgeting for it, but it's also literally families that are dependent on that income. And so then now is the time to say, well, how can we sit and plan for going 3 months with a significant dip in revenue, right? Or services or things like that. And then the other thing is also just from that continuity succession perspective of, if and may Allah protect us, but if there is a crazy situation where there is something that negatively impacts the health of multiple members of leadership, what's the next step? How does the organization survive? How are the people that the organization is serving continue to be served once we, inshallah, come out on the other side of it? So I think there's a number of those challenges that will require a lot of deliberate thought and effort and planning. And especially if we're talking about like your core volunteer staff, your core leadership staff, you might not be able to keep them going on the things that they were before, but it might be time to redirect their efforts and double down on some of these issues that we know are important, but they're never urgent enough to take priority over the fires that we put out on a day-to-day basis. Now that we're getting a break from the firefighting, so to speak, I would say there should be a sense of urgency to take care of these items right away.
It's a great perspective. There's this kind of like this double-sided nature to it, though, right? I feel like they have an amazing opportunity because there's plenty of time, and there's like everybody's got settled and kind of a chance to really think again. But then there's kind of this panic or this fear where everybody's a little bit afraid too. Like you can't do both, right? You can't be afraid and think long term. So like you've got to be able to.
And I think that's the test of, we talk so much about leadership characteristics and leadership qualities and all that stuff. Well, like the saying goes, like anyone can steer the ship when the waters are calm. It doesn't take skill or talent to do things when things are easy, right? So now is the time where that leadership shows of, even when everyone's panicked, do you still have the maturity of thought to maintain a long-term vision? And are you able to actually think in an 18-month or a 24-month time frame as opposed to a 3 to 6 month time frame? And that is, I'm not saying it's easy, it's definitely difficult. But that's the task at hand.
Rami, it reminds me of the incident in the Sirah where in the battle of Khandaq, right? When Rasulullah really, when the humanity, when the Sirah of the Prophet is facing, annihilation, he's envisioning, they're gonna reach the west and the east and the Kisra of Persia. So I mean, at a crisis, you're still thinking about how far you can go, and I think as Omar said, I think really crisis tests your character. Right, and how you act, how you behave, how you think, how you deliver during crisis, for your team, for your people, for yourself, really defines you. I would say this is the defining moment, and so all that good talk, all that nice books on leadership, and now it comes
to life.
So when you got the fire under you, let's see what you're really made out of.
Yeah, and so Jazakallah Khair has great point. Tarek, there was a question, Brother Tarek, on how are nonprofits supposed to navigate specifically their budget right now. So how should a board of trustees, how should leadership be navigating a budget right now for their institution? Of course, they come in different shapes and forms. I'm sure you're going to talk about that. Maybe you want to speak to a couple of the different, a masjid or an institution that's doing really well, or maybe one that's not. How should they be navigating their managing their assets and budget right now?
Yeah, so obviously the first situation any board needs to be looking at right now is looking at all their expenditures. The first thing they want to do is to cut down unnecessary expenditures and see if they can negotiate longer term deals with some of them, to slow down the bleed that they have for fixed costs. That's one thing which is really, really big. Um, for instance, a big center requires a lot of heating, requires a lot of electricity. If the center hasn't invested already into solar panels, then the cost of electricity is a problem. The cost of heating is a problem, and you want to shut things down or reduce the use a little bit, a lot. Recognizing, of course, that the startup cost again of the whole thing will also cost more, probably cleaning out and mold coming through and all kinds of things that they will have to budget for. For organizations that already have a good rainy day fund, most importantly right now, of course, is to ensure that their employees are being paid and taken care of, and to start looking at different ways to bring money in. Like Brother Omar said, it's more important now to look at innovative ways to bring the money in. Any masjid, for instance, will have after Jum'ah, people are coming in, normally dropping something in the box or going to the table and running their credit card or something like this. And that's not happening anymore, of course, right? So now the masjid, now the leadership has to reach out to say, we still like your contributions, we still need your contributions. When we get started, we still have to clean up the place again. Whatever the message will be to make sure that the operation can continue. But it's also at this time, I think, again, what Brother Omar alluded to with the 3 to 6 month view versus a 1.5 to 2 year view or 4 year view or something. Realistically, unfortunately, most of the masajid that we have and a lot of the nonprofits that we have don't have strategic plans for the long term. They have plans for the day-to-day operation, but they don't really have long-term strategic plans. And many of them will probably be caught in a situation right now where they don't know what to do because they haven't really planned for a long-term future. But now is a good time to be thinking about that, and is to really dig inside leadership and to dig inside the community for different talents and different innovations and different ideas that they can come up with to keep money flowing into the organization and to provide services with that, right? Because of course, we just don't want money only. We want the services behind that. And if they don't have a clear idea what services they're providing, it's just Salatul Jum'ah, for instance, then they need to really look into this very carefully, and it may be a good time for them to assess where they are and to think very carefully how they should be leading in the future. Or maybe
Anybody want
somebody else?
Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah.
Great points. Anybody want to jump into the kind of this issue? I just want to say, and I'll say this kind of now. I think a lot of our institutions poorly cover the medical expenses of their employees, particularly in a health crisis like this. I mean, can you imagine like the imam of the masjid getting sick, or somebody I think not just that their leadership. I know Omar brought up maybe somebody on the board gets sick, but I think institutions should be covering and understanding that they need to be able to cover and take care of employees, particularly from a medical perspective. And I know there's a lot of shortcomings on that end, but you need a pandemic to remind you of how critical that is, that you should be taking care of this kind of this obligation on your employees.
I think crisis kind of shows us the areas that we need to work on. As a country, we figured out that we have some issues in our healthcare, we have some issues in our politics of certain ways, some regulations. And I think masjids are seeing what problem they have in their financial models or no models at all. They're seeing they don't have any crisis management plan. They didn't have all their, for some masajid or some nonprofits that we have, they didn't have all their people that they service, all their contacts in one place. They realized they didn't have all their team members organized in one place. I mean, there was no, remember, Rami, you and I, we went to this conference. We were talking about crisis management plan. This was 2 years ago. And a lot of nonprofit, for them, it's not such a, who cares? It's not it's not a very important thing, but people, companies, for example, who don't have, even if they have a crisis plan, they're struggling. And so what about, our nonprofits and small organizations that has no plan, of any sort? So I guess, my question, because I want to actually know for myself, for Brother Tarek and Brother Omar. I mean, like, are there? I'm sure our folks who are watching this, they're gonna ask, what are some practical things? I guess I know Rami, we're gonna ask that, but what are some practical things, I guess, a masajid, for example, can do who are bleeding funds? Is there any concrete advice we have for them? MSAs, they have school funding, and their probably semester is done with anyways, so that's fine. But even other nonprofits who that are not really getting their kind of day-to-day expenses. What are some solutions that you guys have seen other people getting creative and doing right now on the ground?
Yeah, go ahead, Omar. You could take this. You have any thoughts on kind of this? You brought it up first. You brought it up.
You take it.
How should we
I've
be
brought it up
navigating?
to
What
hear
should
other
we be
people's
doing?
solutions.
That's the tough part.
Well, I mean, it depends, of course, on the situation that you're talking about, and the masjid, and the location, and the environment around it, right? But I'm sure you will find openings for grants that may happen, opening for philanthropists who are really well off, that when they see something like this happen, they step in. Even non-Muslim philanthropists, I'm sure will step in when they see mosques do things that are not that are very beneficial for the community. I'm sure they will step in. Other things would be just reaching out to your own community and saying, guys, we need right now. If you can't give us money, give us your muscles, right? give us your ideas. Help us come up with different ideas. But it really all depends on the different locations and the situations of the masjids in different locations. Here in the Bay Area, I'm not that worried about MCA. I'm sure we'll be able to weather the storm, and there's enough people in the community to be able to support and put it together. But other going up the East Bay, there's a few masajid which are built on poorer communities that probably will have a difficult time with this, and people will need to step in to help them in much different ways. And I'm hoping that in metropolitan areas, the rich will help the poor in that sense. I mean, or the less fortunate in that sense, by stepping in to help them and saying, okay, we can provide some of our funding temporarily for you, or loan you some money or something like this to do it. But I think the most important thing is we want to make sure that we don't lose the properties that we have. And if they're entrusted to Nate or entrusted to any other trust, that will help a lot. And maybe that's a good thing that communities should be looking at right now. Is there real estate put in a trust so that it doesn't get lost to anything, like any bankruptcy or something like that, right? So there's a lot of different things that we need to look at, and we really do need to have contingency plans in place. Maybe it's a good time now. It's a good time to think about the contingency plans and come up with them. But still, the day-to-day right now is really, really critical. That we need to help make sure that we survive for the people that we serve.
Great. Omar, you want to add something to that? Anything at all?
I think that covers it well. The only thing I would say is, and I know this word gets thrown around a lot, but it's time to start thinking, is just the idea of the waqf for the endowment. It's obviously it's not a short-term solution. It is a much longer-term solution, but maybe now is the time to see what it would take to set something like that up and start at least laying the groundwork for it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great points. Go ahead, Tarek. You want to chime in?
Sure, the endowments are going to be a big thing now that we come out of this. The endowments are going to be people are going to start thinking about them very, very strongly. Yeah, that will make a big difference.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, those are great points. I think the only thing I'd like to add is, I think, and we did it as an organization, is that you need to really be active in reaching out to your main donor base or your core support of donor base right now. I think we have generally poor donor management skills and approaches generally, particularly our strongest, most important supporters as institutions and organizations, but there should be a conscious effort to directly reach out. And I'm not talking about like sending an email or WhatsApp message. I'm talking about like calling, getting on a Zoom call, talking about, hey, what's going on? What are the next 2 months going to look like? Is there any way that y'all can, we know that this is what we need? There has to be, like, you have to be on top of your game when it comes to managing your donors and your supporters. And I think it's a very important time to be able to show them what the, forecast the next couple of months, be able to go to them and see what they, what you can get and collect. And then of course, then go to the greater general community. You can't treat everybody the same. And I think that's important when it comes to this general donor management.
The one thing that I would want to point out is, sometimes there's an attitude in the community with sometimes that, we're doing good work, and so we're almost entitled to the help in a sense, right? Like, hey, the masjid, for example, the masjid is struggling, everyone needs to help the masjid. And that's 100% is a true statement, like full stop, no exceptions, right? From a leadership perspective, though, I think it's important to have also that element of compassion toward the community, and realizing that one of the consequences of the uncertainty is people are going to be a little bit hesitant right now to give. And so even though organizations are in need of money and the need for donations is like going up, at the same time, people are, because of that uncertainty, they don't know what their own financial outlook is going to be like. There's a lot of people who either have already lost their jobs or are fearful of that possibility coming in the next couple of months, depending on how things go. And so I guess the thing that I want to stress is, if you are in leadership and you're not getting the influx of donations that you would have expected, be lenient with the community. Don't take that to heart as if you're failing, but have just a realistic understanding of the situation and know that it's going to be tough for everyone right now. And so even though you're in need, you might not be getting it right away.
100%. And I'm going to hear your thoughts, Hasan, but I think another thing that stood out, and I thought Tarek alluded to this, is when we have a lack of collaborations, partnerships, whether it's whether it's the kind of the public sector, government institutions don't know you haven't been, because I mean, I was watching the New Jersey governor the other day, and he was like, all religious organizations are going through this crisis right now. Churches, synagogues, all of them are bleeding, losing congregants, having a spiritual, kind of that void of spirituality for their congregants. I think that the networks and the collaborations and the partnerships the allyships that you've developed, they become so crucial now. And really, if you haven't developed those as an institution or organization, really, it leaves you exposed a bit. That, it's just the greater societal help is not there. And I think that that's something to hopefully people are working on, or they're trying to work on now in a way that they haven't done before. Okay, so great thoughts. I want to kind of wrap us up in the next 5 or 10 minutes or so. So I'll go around just kind of like sharing one last thought, or what would let's frame it like this: like, what would be your most important advice right now to, if you're speaking to people, again, having these major responsibilities? By the way, we need to empathize with our community leaders. Like, nobody was elected with the expectation that they're supposed to lead the Muslim community, in their locality during a pandemic. Like, nobody signed up for that, right? I think everybody would have declined being elected for that. So I think there's a level of empathy we need to have as members, as, just supporters in any way, for people that are needing to make tough decisions that they, nobody signed up for. Nobody took a PhD course in, a master's course in. So I guess what is the one advice you would give, going around to each one of you? What's the one advice you'd give, and how to weather these times right now? Like, what is the most important thing, and what is maybe something practical that they can implement day to day, or really keep top of mind as we're going through this kind of really disruptive time right now? I'll start with Hasan. We haven't heard from you, so go ahead, Hasan. You're muted.
I'm not sure how that happened. Maybe Zoom said been quiet or something. I'm not sure. So, anyways, I would say it's the conversation I think, Rami, you and I are having yesterday. It's kind of like the lessons that I thought about. as we saw the bathroom tissue crisis, and the bathroom tissue crisis kind of taught me a few things about leadership, and I think as you look at it, one of it is that you kind of have to go from being selfish to altruistic, so especially in a crisis you can become very self-centered, become a big masajid can say, what, we are bleeding money, or big organization can say, look, yes, we have pretty good security, but but at that time, as Tarek said, giving out kind of loans to the smaller organizations and things like that. So kind of expanding, and that goes at a personal level, caring about your elder neighbors who couldn't shop, instead of you stacking up more canned food and buying up all the tissue rolls. You can think about a little bit about other people as well. I think panic does that to us. We kind of become very selfish in that way, and then going from this paranoia to really some level-headed thinking, the realizing, okay, what is exactly the situation, instead of just getting in this frenzy. And I think a lot of small businesses, a lot of organizations, leaders, they're gonna get in a frenzy zone, because of this all the thing around them. As a leader, you kind of have to step back, sit back, and you have to kind of say, okay, let me analyze what is actually the data, what exactly is happening, what's the possibilities, and then let me weather the storm that way. And then I think in a crisis like this, you kind of become like as if I have to fix everything, and you forget that ultimately you got to have this confidence that and this faith. And as a Muslim, and obviously that Allah is in control. I think that's what we started with, and I think Omar made that point. Tarek made that point. And knowing that Allah is in full control, and I can only do what I can do. You know what I mean? I can do beyond that, and I don't have to solve. I don't have to have all the answer. I don't have to piece it all together, but I could just do today. And I think if people who are leading organizations, or just for yourself, whether you're scared financially for your own in your own business or in your career, as long as you're leading also nonprofits, just knowing that you gotta have some little bit of tawakkul, as was made very top of our episode. Just keeping that in mind, really, like having that full confidence and kind of going to it. So going from self-reliance to having some faith. You gotta know that what, it's gonna get a little more tougher than before it gets better. It's gonna get a little worse. I mean, we haven't hit the peak. We haven't hit the peak economically. We haven't hit the peak even as a pandemic. It's gonna get a little more worse. But inshallah, we're gonna overcome. And you gotta have that kind of confidence, and because we're gonna overcome as we go forward.
Great points. Barakallah feek. Go ahead, Omar.
So I'll just add, I think it's just one simple advice, which is there's a lot of difficult decisions being made, and there's going to be a lot more coming, whether it's, closing the masjid for the Friday prayer, closing the masjid altogether for all prayers. These are not decisions that are taken lightly by anybody. The only thing that I would add is there's going to be a lot more decisions coming that are going to, have a high level of difficulty. Just don't leave out the element of salatul istikhara in that process when evaluating these and having to make a decision that's going to affect the entire community. Make that a part of your due diligence, because no matter what decision you make, a lot of people are going to be extremely upset with you. And that's going to be the only way that you can maintain a clear conscience that you're trying to do things the right way and for the right reason.
That's amazing. SubhanAllah, Jazakallah khair, Omar, very poignant. We've talked a lot about like thinking strategically and planning and things of that sort. I think that gets neglected a lot, particularly when you're in a position of leadership. You really need to spend some time where you do everything you can possibly, as I know you speak about your work in your workshops, right? You tie your camel, do everything within your means, and then trust in Allah Azza wa Jalla. I think that's super important. Barakallah feek. Brother Tarek, your last kind of advices, or your main, what people in the community, people that are leading, what should be the most top of mind thing for them as they kind of go through this day to day?
So for the brothers and sisters who are leading the communities, I think one of the most important things for them to realize is Allah chose them in that position at this time. And it is their job and duty to do the best they can with the resources they have. but they also need to know that the community stands around them and works with them. And they need to reach out to the community. It's not the time now to be isolated. It's not the time to say, it's all in my head and I need to make all the decisions myself. Shura now is very, very important, as well as Salat al-Istikhara on a regular basis. Those two are very, very important. And because Allah has put you in a position like this, most likely this is a good thing for you to discover something new inside yourself. Some power, hidden power inside you that you were not aware of, that Allah is trying to bring out from you. So it is really the time to do this. And this is not only for the leaders, but it's also for the leaders of the house, for the people at home. It's also the idea that it is now time for me to look inside myself and find whatever new power Allah has given to me that I did not know of, but He's put me in a situation where I did not expect to be in. And He's given me some ways to think about this, and I should really spend some time to really think this through. For the leaders, Ista'ana billah is really, really, really important. Recognizing that you're in a position that Allah put you in just at this time. For the secondary leaders, or for people in their homes, if they have time and they have additional time with themselves, it's also a good time to improve yourself in many, many different ways. Whether through things that you haven't been doing with the Islamically, whether it is in your technical abilities, in whatever courses you can pick up and work on, or something like this. These are good. If you have, as my son-in-law put a picture out of a father working at home by tying up his kids so it can work. If it's a matter of having to learn how to deal with your kids and to help, to understand different times of the day that you need to work, that's also a good thing, because they sometimes need their parents, a lot more of their parents' interaction. And recognize, just as a leader reflects to his people that he leads, that you as a parent also reflect on your kids. And if your kids see that you're steadfast and you're resilient and you're thinking properly through something like this, then they will also learn that from you and not give you a harder time. Absolutely. And every one of us is in a test with this, and may Allah make these tests easier for us and make us a better person, better people for these tests.
Ameen. Barakallahu feekum. Beautiful reflections. Ask Allah to bless all of you. Amazing insights. I think really kind of important things. I think a lot of our community leaders, people really involved, people leading, involved supporters, holding together institutions and organizations, a lot of really amazing kind of insights that they need to know. I hope, inshallah, that we can continue to support you all. I know, alhamdulillah, we have a lot of people watching on Facebook and a lot of comments, and we want to kind of continue to support you all. I know everybody kind of alluded to thinking strategically and investing in yourself. That's something that we're doing at Oaktree, mashallah, with Hasan and Omar and Brother Tarek. We're all that's what we exist to kind of train and invest and give whatever we can of knowledge and insights to our community, so that they can become better leaders, so that they can lead their institutions and organizations more effectively. So we'd love to support you at this time, doing that virtually. I'm sure we know there's a lot that we can do virtually for organizations and help and support in any way. So I ask Allah to bless all of you. Barakallahu feekum. Thank you very much, Omar, Tarek, Hasan. Really appreciate it. Ask Allah to protect you and your families, and inshallah ta'ala, we will, bidnillah, try to kind of continue this in a way that we can continue to show guidance and support to our community. Barakallahu feekum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam.